Welcome to the Postgame. I'm Michael Brooks with super producer Matt Leck, chief economist David Wiscombe, super producer David Slavic. We are here, and you are all here in addition, of course, to our patrons, the greatest people on earth. We thank each and every one of you, but this is an open postgame. Did we title it, actually? Did we get some Bernie action in the postgame? I think we should do something that's to be like, Bernie launches, centrists suck. Something like that. Something juvenile. Although, actually, we have a lot of substance to cover in this post game. I guess what I feel bad. I do have to keep stipulating, like, I hope I'm doing okay. Because I am seriously jet lagged, man. We're definitely going to be doing a lot more content on Puerto Rico and Vieques. For next week, we're recording an illicit history of Puerto Rico and the Jones Act with Nelson Dennis, who wrote War Against All Puerto Ricans as a former New York State senator. Very much looking forward to that. That'll be great for all of you patrons. But first, sometimes what we always do in the postgame is we do the Gulag segment. And this is the segment that I know, if it hasn't already, actually it did. I remember one time, one guy, I saw like one of those like, hey, you should check out the Michael Brooks show. They're doing really good content or whatever in one of these kind of like not left spaces. And the response was like, they do a segment called The Gulag, so I think I'll pass. And I just want to say to like, let me do on the serious end, when Matt Taibbi was in here with us talking about actual gulags, I felt kind of guilty about the segment. On the other hand, for the humor challenged, this is a joke. And us doing a segment where we make fun of some asshole, or actually occasionally real, genuine, almost history-grade monsters, is not equivalent to putting people in a gulag. And third, I just want to make something really clear. If I was in charge of a global socialist superstate, we would not have gulags. I am much more a fan, although not in all ways, obviously, but I got to say, and I would do it in a more gentle and more compassionate way. But I think Chairman Mao's instinct to send people to just do some yard work. I'm very sympathetic to. Don't you see some people, like, especially like, I know that's also a tasteless joke, but don't you, like, if you see, I mean, let's just take the easiest example in the world. When you see Jonathan Chait, fire off one of his like, well, actually, if you sold kids blood at the properly regulated environment, that might give an incentive to create more magnet schools. And you just think you could see like Mao hurt and abused many. It was a proxy. It was a way to maneuver political opponents. It was a way to purge people. All of this is true. And I love our historical moment right now, and in terms of media, because I know like right now there's one group of people the cool people and the patrons who are laughing and getting it. And then there's one group of people who are like, oh, they're joking about Mao's crimes. And then there's another group of people who are like, Chairman Mao was awesome. This is a fucking CIA show. And all of that's happening. But that being said, just the basic instinct to just look at a Jonathan Chait and be like, you should go do some yard work.
You may need some re-education.
I think you ought to go get some air, and you ought to work on some rice. It's a good goddamn instinct. So that would be much more the direction I would go in than a gulag. That being said, we still do the gulag segment, and tonight's nominee is Bill Maher. Okay. Play this. Yeah, let's go.
Herein lies a chance for Amazon to show the world that a tech company can actually do good. We have a problem in America called spatial geographic inequality, which means that the most affluent and educated people are clustered in just a few cities. Last year, Hillary Clinton said, "I won the places that represent 2/3 of America's gross domestic product. I won the places that are optimistic, diverse, dynamic, moving forward." Yes, you did. And maybe that has something to do with why Trump voters are obsessed with owning the libs, because the libs own everything else. The blue parts of America are having a big prosperity party, while that big sea of red feels like their invitation got lost in the mail. And they still use the mail. They turn on the TV and all the shows take place in a few hip cities. There's no Real Housewives of Toledo or CSI Lubbock. There are no red carpets in Wyoming, and no one ever asks you, "Who are you wearing?" Because the answer is always Target. There are two Americas, and it seems like one is where all the cool jobs are.
Pause it. So this is basically just a Trump reelect ad that all of these idiots are producing together. But go ahead.
Americas, and it seems like one is where all the cool jobs are, where people drive Teslas and eat artisanal ice cream.
God.
We have orchestras and theater districts and world-class shopping. We have Chef Wolfgang Puck. They have Chef Boyardee.
All right, okay. So let's take this in a serious way, okay? Which I can barely do with Bill Maher. But first of all right, there's actually a much more, the accurate way of understanding the world is not red versus blue states, but inequalities in center and peripheries within each state, right? So as an example, Connecticut, I don't know if it's still the case. It might have switched to California, but I know of a couple years ago, Connecticut was the most unequal state in the country because it has a place like Greenwich, which has awe-inspiring wealth, and then it also has totally racially segregated and deindustrialized zones like Bridgeport, which completely lack for opportunity. The other thing is a lot of the places, and look, I'm concerned, of course, about the working class and disadvantaged people of all backgrounds, period, full stop. But it is fucking amazing. If you want to split the world into red and blue, Democrats, Republicans, you want to have that surface level lame-ass analysis to so fundamentally disrespect and disregard some of the prime recipients of oppression, lack of opportunity, and I'll stop bearing the lead, racism in red states, which are people like African American voters, which vote blue but live in economically impoverished zones in red states at times and experience all sorts of ongoing police, environmental, and every type of repression. So this is just an insane, demented, stupid way of looking at the world. Everybody on that panel is doing their best to validate Steve Bannon's propaganda. And if we don't escape from that smug delusion and create a real just world based not on brand identification, but on real solidarity and empathy, those motherfuckers are going to continue to win. Okay? And that's how it is. And as I say in conclusion, Bill Maher sentenced to the gulag, or I definitely field work for him. And I would humbly like to submit myself as his official replacement on Real Time on HBO. I think I would do a much better job. Thank you. Okay. I could do that. Just have the same, like, okay, you can't invade Venezuela, okay? Something with a pot analogy, okay?
Also, Wolfgang Puck is like in every like airport,
right?
Bullshit resort across the country.
That's
so I
also
don't even
true.
know what the fuck he's talking
That's
about.
also true. That's also true. All right, guys, what we're gonna do? Let's play this. This is hilarious. What's the is Jeremy Corbyn a communist video? Is he a Marxist? All right, so we're going to actually take a brief break and play this video because we're going to talk for a minute with Nomiki Konst. We're calling her up right at the election headquarters tonight. But and we'll get to this new stupid UK independent group in a minute. But first, Chuka Yuma, who's one of the most sort
Acid
of
Womble.
I'm going to set you up to say who made it in a second. He's one of the most mediocre figures in world politics, and as part of this independence group, was asked whether he thinks Jeremy Corbyn is a Marxist, and Acid Womble, who's a hilarious British, video artist. I don't really know. I don't know who they are, but this is
made
fucking
this one.
hysterical. This is great. Let's watch this while I get Nomiki Konst on the phone.
Yes or no, because we're way over time now. I asked this question of so many Labour politicians. I get very different answers. You've talked about Corbyn being an embarrassment to you. Is he a Marxist, in your view?
Young Mike, I'm getting fucked up, I wanna die. But I get inside the bitches, I already fucking died. Fuck the police, bitch, I know my fucking lines.
I think so, yes.
Thank you.
White trash out the slime. Codeine soda with the line on the Japanese sign when I'm smoking on the pine.
Joining us now is friend of show and fingers crossed. I like she's already laughing. The next New York City public advocate, Nomiki Konst. Nomiki, how are you? Why was that so funny?
Hi. I don't know. Friend of show. It was. I'm an FOS.
Yeah, of course. So, Nomiki, I was in Puerto Rico this last week, so I was not as out and about as I maybe could have been, but we've been plugging away at this. First of all, look, you've ran a great campaign. How are you feeling? What's going on?
I feel that we ran a great campaign.
You did.
I really think that, this is a campaign, just for those of you who aren't aware, it was the first citywide special election in the history of New York City. New York City just just inherited or won a new set of matching funds laws. So for every dollar you raised, you got another $8 from the city, but you had to raise a threshold to get it. And so, it was a very constrained time period after November election, during the holidays into the new year, where basically we had about 2 months to raise an extraordinary amount of money to hit matching funds, to get on the ballot, to build a movement, and to do it the honest way. And I am so proud that we achieved all of the thresholds, some of which many elected officials didn't, who had existing bases. And we built a movement very quickly, I think we did it the honest way. I mean, we didn't have an institutional advantage. We didn't loan ourselves money. We didn't use money from other accounts. We raised money from scratch and had the smallest average dollar contribution than any of the candidates, the second most money coming from the city than any of the candidates in terms of small dollars. And I'm just really proud, and we stayed honest with our message the whole way.
And and your message is one of these things that whether or not, and of course we don't know yet, and the hope is, and what we all work to do, and you first and foremost, and that great team you put together, first and foremost, we hope it continues as you become a New York City public advocate. But more broadly than that, I mean, it does remind me on some level of Bernie Sanders in 2016, just in the sense that, like, he lost, obviously, but he set the template for what needs to happen. Like, he won a broader moral and strategic argument. And I think you've done that from housing,
Thank you.
Living wages, who needs to be taxed, policing, New York City's relationship to the vulture capitalism in Puerto Rico. I mean, you put all this on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of it comes from being part of the Bernie campaign and being around such incredible movement leaders who are experts in their areas. I mean, I've gotten to know so many intelligent people, whether through reporting at the Young Turks or on the campaign. I mean,
Thank you.
I learned, exactly, like yourself. That's true. It really is true. I mean, you know, as somebody who hosts a show, you come across, if you're interested in somebody, you can interview them and you learn so much from them. So I learned from being out there, and I wanted to integrate these messages as much as possible in our campaign. And I mean, you mentioned Puerto Rico, where you just were. I spent several months last year reporting in Puerto Rico, and we got some incredible guidance and advice from leaders in the left Puerto Rican movement here in New York, the independence movement. They advised our campaign, and we came up with some really clever ideas, like hosting another conference that's not a corporate conference, but a disaster capitalism conference. There's a big conference here in New York where all the politicians go. I got economic policy advice from some of the best economists in the world, just because I've gotten to know them through the movement. And so our campaign, I think, is a reflection of the movement and our allies. And we were never a top-down campaign. We've always been decentralized. We didn't have a ton of institutional endorsements, but of the institutional endorsements we had, Costa Constantinides is one of the greatest climate leaders in the country. So proud to have his endorsement, and progressive organizations, and the organization that took on Crowley's Queen's Machine here. I mean, all these endorsements mattered, and none of them were top down. And that's what I think is really wonderful about what we've been able to do on this campaign.
Just two more things. And so, whatever. They did this, the Politico piece, and I don't want to belabor it, because it was like, I was offended that my vacation and exploration of Puerto Rico was interrupted to read this fucking boring nonsense. I was like, I mean, I couldn't, I was like, because honestly, my assumption, both in terms of willingness to forgive in general, and also just people having led lives, I kind of read it and I was like, well, fuck. I mean, no, Miki's moved. I mean, shit. Nailed it. But I do think the only serious point about that piece was that, they're clearly, I mean, there's obviously a huge amount of hostility with people with legitimately progressive politics. And they're going to go after, apparently now, even any just sort of unevenness of life, anything that doesn't fit into the perfect square pages of a CV, which of course nobody's life does. I think you handled it really well. And I mean, what do you have a sense, just kind of moving forward, of how we do media, how we, I don't know, just kind of respond to that kind of thing. And also my instinct, I'm assuming that when you're out campaigning and talking to real people, nobody asked you about that. Nobody cares. No, because it's nerdy nonsense. Nobody did. Right. Yeah, nobody knew anything about the piece. It was very political insidery. Right. And just some background. I mean, it's still raw, and it was still it's still very hurtful, because people are still, legitimate reporters that I respect have retweeted it. The New York Times, New York Mag reporters, they retweeted it, and they, it basically ganged up on me as if I was hostile by challenging the article. But the reality is, and I will do after the campaign, I will do a deeper dive into this, because part of it is we just didn't want to get sidetracked going down the rabbit hole of fighting with the media just a few days before the election. And that's strategic too. So, they came to us and they said, they wanted us to come in for an interview on the day of my New York Times editorial board meeting, and also the day before the debate. And we said,
we can give you a quote if you're going to do an article. And they said, well, we're not, we're going to go to print either way. So either come in and talk to us or you don't, which is already hostile.
Right.
And then I went in for an hour and a half, and none of the questions in the room, they were all very, I hate to say that, but like it was very gotcha. It was like, well, you say that you went here. You said you started this year. And I immediately was like, why? What are you talking about? They're like, well, on your LinkedIn page, it says you started it this year. And I said, well, that was the year the club started, but then we filed it the next year. And It's like just very, very like boring stuff. But, I realized that I knew what they were trying to do. And they were, one of the things that our message has been is really we're trying to come from a place of like, I'm a journalist, I'm coming, with experience in investigations, and they try to delegitimize any of my work or erase it. Like they just erased years of my life, of my career, erased it. Right. And then they said that like 2 of my organizations went bust. One of them, literally, the guy like who I co-founded with was very sick. Like it's and they knew that. And so, they played this game, and then the next day, they gave me 24 questions to answer that night, which was debate night. And by the way, one of the authors of this piece was the moderator in the debate who was fact-checked on me. She challenged me the week before in the other debate, and she was fact-checked as wrong. I was the only person she challenged. And so we said, unfortunately, we've given you an hour and a half. The second set of questions there were some very simple questions, and then there were some extremely complicated questions, like name the names of the people who attended your trainings 9 years ago. Or some stuff that was just like I wasn't legally allowed to share. Like, I had board, you're not allowed to like share certain things when you're on a board. Right. And they were asking for those kinds of questions, and they wanted it within a few hours. And we said, unfortunately, we have to focus on the campaign. We have a debate tonight, and we're not going to be able to answer any more questions. We've been very generous with our time, and you've yet to ask us any questions about the campaign or anything that makes her relevant, and we see where you're going with this piece. And the next day it came out, and it was just this web of misinformation. I mean, one thing in particular that sticks out to me is she claims she went to Libya. I had a reporter friend of mine who's known me for about a decade. He said, I Googled Namiki Khan. He knew I was in Libya. He goes, I Googled Namiki Khan's Libya, and I saw 3 things pop up right away. Like I was lying about going to Libya. I worked for an organization in 2013, and it's like they didn't have to fact check. They could have just Googled. Right. So it was just, a very dirty smear piece. And what I can tell you now that it really doesn't matter because the polls are closed is it came from an opposition research file that we knew was false, written by somebody who wasn't a professional, that had been basically sharing this with reporters for a couple of months. And and it's dirty, and it's, unfortunately, like this is a candidate who had people online who were sharing this information for weeks, trying to smear me. And I think the media, Politico, which, was founded by Republicans, which had some problems because they were partnering with Cambridge Analytica and had, sponsored content with Donald Trump, anti-Hillary sponsored content on the internet. They've never been honest. It's not just that they're anti-Sanders, anti-progressive. They have they're treated like they're a legitimate news organization, but they're tabloidish, and they don't even really they didn't have a fact-checking department. No one called me up and said, I want to, like the New Yorker does, I want to verify this, I want to verify that. Like, it was sloppy, it was disgusting. They labeled organizations the wrong names. They said that Josh Fox was on the Unity Reform Commission. He wasn't. They misquoted, people that were quoted in it. And unfortunately, I worry because the damage might be done. And my opponent had no problem, and the institution that was working with him had no problem character assassinating me to their own advantage because they were worried about losing their progressive support. And I think that's dirty, especially from a candidate who, was saying that every attack on him was a political attack when it was something that was, in the records.
Yeah.
So very, very disgusting politics. And unfortunately, I don't have an institution to go out there and send out surrogates to defend me. It's we have to focus because we're a grassroots campaign. So
right. And I mean, it still might go exactly the right way. And I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, I understand why it pisses you off so much, as it should. But I also just, as a reader, I was like, what? Like, are you fucking kidding me? I was envious. I was like, it's a very chill opposition file.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Is like one person called me up and they were like, "Wait, was there a there there?" They're like, it was annoying, but like the way it was written, like she claims, and
There was
you
nothing.
know,
I mean,
she
what I
didn't
mean by is, yeah,
respond.
there's no. I mean, there was just. I mean, it was, yeah, and I just think in general. I mean, I think yes, there needs to be a lot. Maybe we do need to have a conversation about that. Like, how do people band together? How is there sort of like, how do we keep making sure that we are synergizing and you know, working together in really you know, tangible and fast and responsive ways to respond to things like that on behalf of like a candidate like you. I think more broadly though, I think there is some advantage in also just, you know, very much in the response to your campaign. It's sort of like, guys, we're going to get back to actually working for people that need apartments in New York City. I mean, like, if you can actually sit and spend your day, you know, worrying about this kind of nonsense, then you probably are not at the front lines of the issues that we really need to deal with. And, you know, that's what we're about, and that's what we're going to do. And that's exactly what you did. And that's exactly why, from the beginning, you've deserved to win, and hopefully you will. And I was, you know, very stoked to vote for you today. Can I ask you just two other quick questions?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. One, what are you drinking tonight, and what's the party scenario?
So I'm sitting here in our office right now. I just heard everything quiet down, so I think they've all left. There's a bar very close to our office. It's like literally 2 doors down. It's called Catch. It's sort of the center of the progressive. Our office was Bernie Sanders' Queen's office and Cynthia Nixon's Queen's office, and it was our Queen's office, and Catch, which is next door, is sort of the progressive bar for Queens, and they're hosting our party. So everybody just went down. All the field organizers and canvassers went down there, and our supporters are meeting there. And I am right now. As soon as it hit 9 o'clock, I stopped at my apartment, which is not too far away, to get changed, and I got a bottle of ouzo that I had from Greece, and I figured, you know what, that'll take the edge off.
Very
So I
on
just poured
brand,
myself a little bit of ouzo. Yeah,
That's super on
I don't know. I
brand.
was just like, I'll do some ouzo. That sounds good. It'll take the edge off, and I won't drink it like all night. So.
You know what? I don't drink ouzo. I like
yeah.
Rucka. Boom.
What was the last thing you said?
I said
you like what?
Raka. I'm forgetting it. It's the Turkish version of ouzo.
Raka.
Yeah.
I'm trying
to do a little Turkish Greek beef. That's all.
Raki. It's very good.
Oh, Raki,
and it's,
right.
You know,
right.
Raki is like you drink that like in the mainland, and then the islands drink ouzo. So can I just share one little thing, because this is a cool moment of the campaign. I live in Astoria, and Astoria is historically a very large Greek population, and I'm Greek, but it's also the most concentration of progressives in the city. Couldn't have picked a better place to have my headquarters in my apartment. But today I had, just meeting people on the streets, how many Greeks I had to speak to, and I did this like phone call to all of them. It was pretty cool. It was a really neat experience to just like, your people turning out for you, and I've never experienced that before. So
that's awesome.
I just wish my grandparents could have been around to like see it. Yeah.
That's sweet. And then will you come on TMBS sometime within the next, say, 6 weeks, whether you are the elect to the public advocate's office, which you should be, or whether or not you're launching the next thing you're doing, which I'm sure is going to be incredibly important and exciting, and talk to us about either of those two things.
Of course.
Beautiful.
Are you kidding? You've been so incredible, whether hosting our parties or giving us shout-outs or helping us raise money to get to matching funds. I mean, I'm saying this with all of my heart and honesty. We would have not made matching funds had you not been so supportive. Sam as well, Sam,
awesome.
PYT, and you, Michael. It was I mean, we knew when you guys were talking because we'd see the uptick of donations come in. And I know for a fact we would not have hit matching funds. It was very, very, very hard. And I think at the end of the day, like, the matching fund system needs to change because it's, you know, we hit the deadline, but they gave us some money just like a few days in advance. So it was a hard thing in the end. But, you know, I'm just so grateful to you because you have a good megaphone. Your show is so intelligent. You have the most incredible guests and thoughtful perspective on history and the complexities of politics. And, you know, you just kind of get beyond the fluff and the spin. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And I just, I'm excited to loop back. I mean, I have no idea what's happening right now, so I'm not even looking at the polls. So.
No, Miki, I'm honored, and I'm bullish. I'm a confident dude, so I remain confident that it's going to go the right way, and you're going to come in here as the elect. But no, Miki, I really appreciate it.
We have no idea. That's the truth.
We have no idea. You're awesome. I appreciate everything you do, and whatever the next step is, it's going to be equally as awesome and important. No, Miki, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. And when you're done with the show, you should come by catch if we're still around.
If that would be like a death-defying leap with my jet lag, but
actually,
we'll see.
Anybody listening, jet lag, you came from Puerto Rico. It's an hour difference.
I had 3 different connecting flights. I literally took a trip back from Puerto Rico that took, if you factor in the delays, 18 hours, which is fucking insane.
There is a very cheap flight from on JetBlue.
No, I missed it. I don't. We could talk about some other time. I have flown back to the United States from like deep in the Middle East at at less than half the time.
Faster rate.
It was fucking crazy.
Okay, next time we should go celebrate there because you know I'm like a regular there now.
100%.
I know all the hot spots.
Let's do it.
Well, also to your listeners, if you guys want to come by, we're having our election watch party at Catch Astoria on Newtown Avenue. I think it's 3119. It's right at 30th Avenue in Newtown, off the 30th Avenue subway stop. If anybody's around, we'll be there right now.
Go. Thank you, Nomiki.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Nomiki's great. What is that, Griscom?
I was just saying, yes, she is. I was happy to vote for her.
Concur.
Okay, a few Discord questions. The Clintons' cat Socks lived from... This is from Congressional Baseball Fan. The Clintons' cat Socks lived from 1990 until 2009, even though the Clintons disowned him in favor of their dog Buddy, who in 2002 was killed by a car while playfully chasing a contractor in Chappaqua while the Clintons were not home. Can we get to the bottom of this mysterious Clinton death? That's a really, really, that's a good, I mean, it's not going to happen on this show, but I love it. Michael McAllister, in regards to the discussion of public housing, is there no reason why building materials, especially if negotiated in bulk, couldn't be obtained inexpensively? Most places in the United States have pretty inexpensive manufacturing mobile homes available. Decent ones can be had for $40,000 to $80,000. It's the land that's incredibly expensive. For instance, for reference, a fully loaded powered wheelchair. Dude, let me just read this out, David. Powered wheelchair runs between $40,000 and $50,000. Medicare purchases a new chair for me every 5 years, usually around $30,000. Individually, you wouldn't need a new house every 5 years, so it would actually be quite attainable. It's just a matter of political will. If these newly manufactured homes were built upon public lands, we could give folks homes. Housing absolutely does not have to be expensive as it is. Sorry for the long comment. It's just incredibly frustrated when this is couched as a matter of affordability.
There's a tension. Some people want houses to be affordable, and some people want houses to be investments.
Exactly.
And, you know, one of the unfortunate aspects of in the United States is a lot of people want public housing or affordable housing to be punitive and not a place that is nice and comfortable for people to live in, which is something, you know, we have to fight back against and change that perspective. Because public housing should be beautiful. I mean,
it should be. Well, look in Vienna. Miff Schmechter. Hey, folks. This week on Chevy Chase Plays the President SNL, my co-host from Joey Bossis and I talk about the lofty expectations of the so-called left. Every true 2020 Dem candidate should tell every true 2020 Dem candidate should tell the left that what I tell my wife, it's simply unrealistic to think I can get across the finish line. All Democrats have the same goals, just some have unrealistic plans to map out every step of how we get there, while others, more pragmatic Dems, map out step 1 and leave steps 2, 3, and 10 to the great American imagination. Okay, let's get to some of this. I guess I'm getting word from David that it does not look great for Nomiki. That sucks. But, you know, honestly, I mean, I just really think that there is innate value in these kinds of campaigns and what they bring to the table. She brought a hell of a lot to the table.
The terms of the debate have been very interesting, too, just by how the candidates have had to position themselves in the competition, basically.
100%. And, you know, I think Jumaane Williams is going to get it. I don't know as much about Jumaane. I enthusiastically supported him for lieutenant governor in the Cynthia Nixon ticket, taking on, you know, Andrew Cuomo, obviously. And I liked everything he had to say then. My support of Nomiki is based entirely on the fact that I like, respect, and know Nomiki, and she brought the right issues to the table. I don't know the other candidate that she was referring to there about the Politico piece, so I'm going to look into that. But I will just say generically, if it's Jumaane Williams, this is somebody who's definitely courted enough of groups like DSA where there's a context to put a lot of pressure on him to have a no bullshit anti-real estate industry agenda. So we shall see. All right, let's get to some sound that we got to get through. And let's start with these two Bernie Sanders clips. First, Killer Mike is really good. And there's something weird about social media cycles. There's this notion that because Bernie didn't win South Carolina, or Bernie in this incredible tectonic shift race that the Sanders campaign in 2016 was, that because it didn't move enough African-American voters, because it didn't do what it needed to do ultimately to win, that, you know, it was like, well, Killer Mike, you know, he gave these great speeches, but it didn't come through or something. And first of all, I just think, like, people need to be very realistic about surrogates and people in general, including, you know, look, I think, of course, political endorsements are valuable, but ultimately there's the highly personal dynamics of the candidate themselves, and then just much broader structural variables about what the campaigns do. And, you know, the mistakes that were made by the Sanders campaign and the structural forces that were arrayed against them and all of the incredible successes and right things they did were not, you know, to the extent Killer Mike has points on the scoreboard, it's in the successes and right things to do. And he remains, I think, just one of the most clear sort of advocates, not only for Bernie Sanders, but actually of real basic progressive values and humanity in America. And I was very happy to see him back on a show. This is a Girl Chat, real time, and it's on I think it might be a YouTube show, actually, explaining why he's still with Sanders.
I don't think you beat Magneto without Professor X. So we need the total antithesis of what we say we don't like about Trump, and the total antithesis of that is Bernie Sanders. You know, and my thing is, you don't put out a fire without water, and we need water right now.
Can you just give me a couple of details of why you like him as a candidate?
Okay. Do you like and respect Dr. Martin Luther King?
Yes. Of course.
So Dr. King, if you guys watch King in the Wilderness, in his last 3 years of life, pretty much all of his friends had abandoned him. The organizations he had started had kind of left him alone. But his things were anti-war, actually the eradication of poverty, and the upliftment of workers' rights, and the restoration of nobility to basically humanity. No other presidential candidate I've seen in my life has an agenda that matches Dr. King's agenda with more points than Bernie Sanders. So my support of Bernie Sanders My support of Senator Sanders is not about personality. It's not about politics. It is about the agenda that I saw Dr. King and my grandmother and people who marched for all of our civil rights finally is on a platform of a politician, and I'm led by principles and morals, not by men. So his principles, his morals, and his agenda is that.
And this is a really important point there, because you've seen Bernie come out and completely crush his first week fundraising goals. And a significant number, I don't have it in front of me, are actually from new donors, people that didn't donate to Sanders in 2016. One of the myths and one of the big propaganda pieces that people push against Sanders is that this is a cultish movement. And there's two answers to this. There is a cultish element that you see on social media, and there's a cultish element that you see on social media that was far more pronounced, frankly, with Hillary Clinton. And it is applicable to all candidates across the board, because for some reason, these platforms seem to incentivize that kind of behavior and unhealthy relationships. And the Sanders campaign is actually getting out ahead of this. They explicitly have said, hey, you know what, communicate well. You're an ambassador of a brand, frankly. And it doesn't mean for a second not holding all these other candidates accountable for their records. Absolutely not. But you got to be tasteful. If you want to be out as, and again, I don't mean don't be funny. I don't mean don't have some snark. But don't give them case studies for their propaganda. But on the flip side, and the much broader, more important point, is that in the real broad world of why people are advocating for Senator Sanders and why people are contributing to his campaign and why people will knock door to door and why they will fight for him is because, like Killer Mike is saying, it is an agenda. And I think there's so many people, particularly in the professional class of the Democratic Party, that have been so divorced from politics as anything other than a managerial branding exercise that they simply cannot comprehend of the basic gut commitment to real things in people's lives. And I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is perfect. I'm not saying he gets everything. I'm not saying he hasn't made mistakes. But he has a raw, clear commitment to many of those things. And, by the way, is more coachable than most other candidates. That's why people are there. And that is precisely the opposite of a personality cult. That is profound issue commitment. And that's what Killer Mike is putting across so well there. And on the comms piece, let's check out, this is the first ad from Bernie's campaign. I really like this announcement ad because this is seamless. And Bernie Sanders always, back to 2016, I think you got to get to the beginning of it. Yeah. If you go back to 2016, I mean, look, he's actually been a very effective legislator. I think he was called the king of the Amendment King. He's known his whole time in Congress and the Senate how to get things for Vermont, how to stick in important provisions that help people with, things, of course, that he's going to care about, like dental care and other things. But one of the amazing things out of the success of his 2016 race is that, of course, I mean, obviously he's the most popular politician in America, but he's been going for it. I mean, he has been a leader in trying to end this Yemen genocide that we back every day. He has been a leader. Now we have all these other candidates have signed on to Medicare for All. That's Bernie Sanders' leadership. And, of course, Pramila Jayapal as well. So I like how this ad synthesizes the history with what's happening now. Let's check that out.
Real change never takes place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up.
Bernie Sanders' healthcare for all idea is gaining steam.
Free tuition, free college tuition, free tuition champion, Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders added, the greatest threat to national security is climate change.
The future of our planet is at stake.
Sanders taking on Amazon.
Bernie Sanders has been consistent hammering about income inequality.
Nobody in America works 40 hours a week, should be living in poverty. So our economy is rigged. We have a campaign finance system which is corrupt.
Sanders leading the charge to stop war against Yemen.
The first time ever the Senate has voted to end an unauthorized war.
The fight against injustice has been the work of his life.
Jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. We are not going to retreat on women's rights.
Sanders pushing a bold agenda that includes protecting DACA recipients and comprehensive immigration reform.
You don't rip little children away from the arms of their mother.
A major announcement from Amazon. Amazon will raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour. 350,000 workers.
Thousands of workers at Disney World will get raises. It's a victory for Bernie Sanders.
It's a victory for all workers. Brothers
I
and
love
sisters, we have a lot of work
correction
in front of us.
announcer made by my own political advertising firm.
If we are prepared to stand together, there is no end to what the great people of our nation can accomplish.
It's a beautiful ad, and I'll cop to it. I was not, we were, going to the ocean and doing. I wasn't in front of the computer that much, and I saw this ad, and I actually teared up a little bit. I think it's basic, it's correct. And all of the instincts and all of the simplicity that he brings to the table is excellent and necessary. And the anecdote to this Trump grotesqueness, I also like, but I do like the it's a victory for all of us. Like let's put the part in the ad where Bernie is so curmudgeonly that he.
I like Bernie breaking the fourth wall on his campaign announcement.
I want a Marshall McLuhan moment in this cycle's political advertising. It's a victory for all of us. Let's go to the opposite, very much opposite end of this equation. I want to start with Amy Klobuchar as actually the door, as the pathway. So I'm trying to really follow. I'm one of few's, unabashed, 100%. I support Bernie Sanders. I sincerely think, especially if you consider also the global and environmental dimension, that I would never pin the hopes of global politics and our broader prospects on one person or one campaign. That being said, if you elect Bernie Sanders president of the United States in 2020, that is probably the most significant one act that out of what's on the table right now. Maybe in 6 months, there'll be global mass strikes that will connect workers from Harare in Zimbabwe to New Haven, Connecticut, right? Maybe. But what is here right now, including many important movements, the teachers' movements, the teachers around Oakland, all of this stuff, if you made Bernie Sanders president of the United States in 2020, that would be the most significant counteracting effect to not only the modern fascist trend, but all of the toxic neoliberalization trends of the last couple of decades. I'm just, to me, it's just indisputable. And I'm going to balance that with an ecumenical approach, where, as example, Tulsi Gabbard's been having excellent takes on foreign policy. Props to Tulsi Gabbard. I saw, and I don't know the specifics, that Kamala Harris is going to talk about decriminalizing sex work. Great. I've seen good noises. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren has a whole set of genuinely excellent policies, and she's a very good candidate. And Cory Booker, in his time in the Senate, has sponsored legislation to end the drug war and deal with reducing the prison industrial complex. Good for him. I will remain ecumenical. Probably unless, I don't know, Mike Bloomberg goes in. but maybe not until him. Oh, or obviously, I mean, of course, fuck Howard Schultz, but that's almost just an afterthought. But I think I found the candidate here. And last week, there's already a clip up of the pseudo-woke defense of the workplace abuse stuff. And Amy Klobuchar, the only good thing that could come out of this campaign is she gets primaried and tossed from the Senate. Here she is on a CNN town hall last week talking about free college.
So I graduated from college in 2017, and I currently pay roughly the equivalent of my rent in student loans every month. And, you know, I have friends that graduated 6 figures in debt. Here in New Hampshire, students graduate on average with the highest average student loan debt in the nation.
36,000 or something like that.
It's absurd. And so I'd like to ask you, would you be willing to stand with my generation and end the student debt crisis by supporting free college for all? And would you include undocumented and formerly incarcerated people in that program?
Fuck yeah, dude.
And if you could please just preface your answer with a clear yes or no, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, let me answer you first of all. I think we have to do everything to help our students afford college.
No.
My idea is to make it easier to refinance. To start with your 2-year degrees, the community colleges being free. That's something that President Obama was pushing. There's a reason I'll get to why I'm starting there instead of 4-year. So I want to answer that question first for you. And let you know that I also had student loans, and when I married my husband, he had tens of thousands of student loans to make you feel better, but I married him anyway, all right? Okay, so here's what we need to do. The first thing is we need to make it easier to afford college. And you need to do that by making it easier to refinance these loans, by extending Pell Grants, so it includes more students. Those are simply grants, right? So if you extend those Pell Grants, that's going to make it even easier because right now it's for a limited number of students, and I think we should expand it to more students. I think that we should do as much as we can with some of the other populations that you referred to. We've got to make it easier for people getting out of prison to afford going to school, you name it. But the other thing I want to talk about here is something, I know we're in a 4-year degree school, a great school, but you also have in Manchester a 2-year community college. And there's a lot of kids right now who are off the grid, right? They don't graduate from high school around the country, or they end up maybe barely graduating from high school. They accumulate debt in a 4-year college. Then they end up not being able to either finish that college, or they end up not being able to get a job that pays for it. So right now there are a big number of jobs that require certifications, 2-year degrees, everything from welding.
By this point in a debate, Donald Trump has, I mean, of course, been a misogynist and so on, but he's probably already lied about her position, falsely claimed that he supports free college himself, told a funny anecdote about his own college experience and how great his grades were.
We want the smartest people.
And this, I mean, this is the type of answer that see, this is the profound disservice that Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and actually in the UK, Tony Blair have done, because they have wrapped the most boring, piecemeal, either destructive or slightly positive but insufficient proposals in just unparalleled charisma personalities. When you try to spin this stuff out with zero charisma, as you'll see with a, you know, someone like a Chuka Yuma or a Frank Fields or a Michael Bloomberg or a Terry McAuliffe, you are DOA. So anyway, I just want to say that. But I mean, I guess we'll continue torturing ourselves till the point, does she finally just say no after all of this bullshit?
To technology, to robotics, something big here in New Hampshire. I know Mr. Kamen with the Segway educated our whole country on robotics.
That's a very current
and
reference.
They require various degrees. So one of the things that I want to do is really have a big discussion in our country about what we do about kids that aren't graduating from high school, kids that don't get to the point of being at this great college, right? And how we get them into the certifications, the 2-year degrees, and make sure that we're paying for that because our economy needs that, and then go from there.
Because
So
our
she didn't-
economy needs that.
Because our economy needs it. And so just to be clear, she totally dismissed and disrespected this kid by not answering his question. But that was a long, convoluted, boring, dull, neoliberal invalidation of education that said, no, I do not.
And it implies the wrong argument that the reason that wages are low for most workers is because most people are not getting degree certifications. It misses the point that while college education can be a path to a good job, a lot of people are still being held down by student debt. And lastly, it really it pisses me off so much because what it means is that for people who go to four-year colleges do have access to higher paid jobs, right? It's not a guarantee that you're going to get them, but it's an excuse that we make in this country that keeps poor people out of the contention for higher paid jobs because they cannot afford to go to four-year colleges and they're pushed into technical programs. It's wrong. It's morally wrong. It's economically incorrect. And it's just fucking bullshit. And and that's why we've seen the rise of a right wing, which is trying to dismantle this very boring slumber state that the neoliberals have been pushing for so long.
No, this is what it is, and it's this profound, and it's incredible because it's actually this essentially that the state can exist and intervene in the service of programming humans to service capital, which is the ultimate end way of third way politics. And we see it in this just dead end, depressing, monotonous, unimaginative, catastrophic candidacy of Amy Klobuchar. And the best case scenario is this is a case study in a politics that needs to die.
And just real quick, just talk about something like coding. That's the big,
that's the big scam.
It's we're going to get the high school kids to code. The point of that is just to suppress the wages of people who are doing that code work, because the people who made all the money, coders early on in the technical revolution in the United States, all those people, their equivalent, are doing much different things at this time. They're managers, right? So it's talking about coding in and of itself is something that's going to create, opportunity for people. The only reason there's opportunity is because there's only a few people who could do it for a little bit of time.
And also Megan Day's done a lot of extensive reporting more broadly on how always the lie that employees aren't hiring because they just have these really highly trained jobs and they need a workforce that can meet them. But as soon as actually in the last couple of years, there actually has been, obviously the raw unemployment rate we need to problematize and so on, but it has gone down enough where companies needed to actually basically be like, oh, those things 3 years ago that we were saying were completely non-negotiable, oh, it's totally out the window. And of course, we can hire people for various jobs that we were terrorizing them out of to, as a discipline our own already beleaguered workforce, to pay them less and give them less benefits. So Amy Klobuchar has no answer to anything other than to make them worse. And I've been pretty bullish because I think structurally Trump is eminently beatable. And I think that, many candidates, including candidates that are, would be at the bottom of my list, like a Joe Biden, I think would just crush Donald Trump. I found the candidate that I think actually whoa, I don't know if that'll work. I found the Democratic candidate that I think Donald Trump takes re-election on. She needs to get out of the race and then be defeated in a Democratic primary. There is, though, she could maybe find refuge in a international movement of narcissistic mediocrities who circle around literally brain dead politics. What's incredible about this centrist thing is that because of the time warp they're stuck in the 1990s, words like new and innovation and fresh were very trendy, but they're saying all of those words in the most stagnant, dead way imaginable. And there's a new grouping in the UK called the Independent Group, which I believe is 7 Labour defectors and 3 Tory defectors, who have left their respective parties to support a new group, which basically is circling around the umbrella of they hate Jeremy Corbyn, even though these Labour MPs campaigned with him just last year and won under increased margins thanks to his manifesto and leadership. They are, of course, not resigning from Parliament and offering themselves up for by-elections because they are not serving their constituencies, both Labour and Tory, by the way. You both have a gripe. If you voted for one of these people on support of one of your respective parties and they're ditching it, you're being disrespected by these supposed paragons of the new British politics. Of course, the other delusional thing is obviously the totally marginalized Liberal Democratic Party in the UK represents the center. And what the Liberal Democrats did when they actually got a little bit of power in the coalition with David Cameron and the first Tory government of this ongoing just atrocities and austerity that have been occurring since 2009, the Lib Dems did things like, in exchange for backing massive Tory cuts, which hugely increased poverty and inequality across the UK, they got things like, small, like plastic bag taxes, really good, innovative, important lawmaking. So you might ask yourself, what does this independent group believe? Does it involve the UK's version of Segway scooters and community colleges? Well, check it out. Here's Anne Sudbury, she's a former Tory. She's going to lay out the policy vision of this new group that the masses of Britons who have given the Labour Party increased margins under the unapologetic democratic socialist leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and voted for Brexit. This is what they're hungry for.
I want to be a broad church. You don't mind if people come to join you that don't exactly agree with you on policy. What is the kind of leap?
Sorry, we don't have any policy. We're not a political party.
I was about to say, well, you're not a political party, but you'll eventually have to stand for something. You'll have to become a political party.
But it's those shared values, and it's really weird.
Wait a minute, you can't have the party of shared values.
No. All these things, I have no doubt, will happen and come about. That is not, if I may say, you're still stuck in the old way of doing things. This is something new and different. The thing that unites us is not just the values and the principles, but it's the fact that we are not tribal.
But we need to know what you're for, not what you're against.
But you do know what we're for.
And what presumably you're for.
They're purely tribal. They're the tribe of a small, disconnected, delusional group of affluent technocrats who have zero connection with the needs of the broad base of the United Kingdom. And any governing strategy by default will fall along the lines that, of course, you could already guess. They will be slightly more socially moderate, although I don't think you'll see any actual spirited defense against the horrific xenophobia of the Theresa May government. You're not going to see it from these moral nothings. And then, of course, they're going to embrace austerity, and they're going to embrace privatization, and they're going to embrace messing with the NHS. We already know where they're going. They represent their own tribe, which is a group of selfish people that get ferried around in cars to do TV hits and are funded by private interests and who suck.
You know what we're for.
And what presumably you're for are not just policies on Brexit, but if you were to stick together.
We believe in sound economic policies.
There you go.
And a sound economy that can fund first-class public services. We know that. We tolerate. We believe in all those principles.
Where are you in taxation? Do you believe on low taxation? Do you believe in high taxation? Where do you believe in public spending?
I think what we believe in, and we've not even had these conversations yet.
But hang on, what happens when you have them and you don't necessarily agree?
You cannot speculate like that. We just know between us as a group that we have these common values and these common principles.
Which have nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with people's needs and are clearly just a reflection of your own social grouping.
That interview looks like it's a scene from The Thick of It.
It is. It's post The Thick of It.
Do you remember what's that scene in the Ricky Gervais in the Office where he's like, well, if you're gonna do that, remember what I'm saying? I'm gonna try to look for it, but it's her action, which is like, it's not fair to ask me like about taxation.
It's like taxation.
If you're gonna do that, I'm gonna go home.
Grouping? You want to know what we think of the most important policy mechanism of our time? It's so uncouth. Let's play Ash Sarkar on the complete opposite end of that. She's from Novara Media, which everybody should subscribe to on YouTube and listen to their podcasts. They're a great UK media outlet. But she just really lays bare the just complete narcissism and delusion of these people. Do we have that? It's in the links. We follow each other on Twitter. Someday, maybe. I mean, the timing difference is hard, but someday maybe she'll be a TMBS guest. Check this out.
I know from the conversations we had with voters and the letters that I had to put out in the, to Labour voters.
I don't know this woman's name. Hopefully her Chiron will appear, but she's a Labour MP who's joined this independent group. And as you could see, we just heard from a Tory MP and now a Labour MP, but I could see how they would be in the same grouping.
Who would not vote Labour unless I reassured them that Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't be Prime Minister. I know we would have lost that seat. We only kept my seat in 2017 because I reassured Labour voters that Jeremy Corbyn would not win the election and therefore they could, in safety, return me as their MP.
Ash? I'm sorry, that's completely outrageous. You stood on a Labour manifesto, and on that Labour manifesto it said that you would deliver the referendum result, and now you're turning around and saying you don't want that. What's changed since then? You stood on a Labour manifesto which would, had it won, made Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and now you're saying that you had separate conversations with your constituents.
Yes, I did.
Why should anybody trust a single word coming out of your mouth when you're saying that your behaviour in 2017 was dishonest?
Because I was honest with my voters. That election was a
your
very...
Your constituents voted for a Labour MP.
I didn't interrupt. I was very honest with my voters. I've had a relationship with my constituency for a very long time now. I know how most of my voters think because they correspond with me all the time. I was very honest with them. That election was called at very short notice. Nobody expected it. And I was clear that I did not stand for unilateral nuclear disarmament.
Which wasn't in the manifesto.
Removing membership of NATO.
Which wasn't in the manifesto.
And on Brexit. But we know what Jeremy Corbyn really thinks about it.
But it's not in the manifesto.
And on Brexit, I was clear with my voters that I would not vote for a Brexit that made the country poorer. And now we see Jeremy Corbyn facilitating a Tory Brexit.
Right, let me just ask you, Ash, because one of the things that Angela said is that her values haven't changed, but the party's values have. Is there a sense, you're not a member of the Labour Party, you've said you're literally a communist. Can you understand why people in the Labour Party who've been there as long as Angela would have a problem with that, and that the party's changed, not them?
You know, absolutely. And I think that the change isn't actually so much to do with the personalities around the Labour Party. It's about the political landscape that a Labour Party would have to inherit. I think that ever since 2008, we've seen that this model of sort of soft, centre-left, centre-right, beige politics, it's been completely discredited all over Europe. So any party that wants to do well in this country dealing with the state of people's household finances will have to offer something different. What I don't understand, and I think this is also why they're not so keen to launch a party straight away, is because the policies that they would have to offer run against the current of public opinion.
That's it. That's precisely it. And as we always say, the actual center is precisely the opposite of the usual fiscally conservative, socially liberal bullshit that is always peddled by these people. And we're all tired of it. All right, a few more Discord questions, then we're going to wrap. A question from DeHorns. Hi, Michael. Is there any significant leftist challenger to Maduro in Venezuela that we should help promote and put support behind? And is there a better option within the Bolivarian revolution? Not a leftist challenger. I actually think what's interesting is Falcone, who, and I don't know enough about him, but I would say he was definitely much more in the center left than a Guaido. He might have won had the opposition not boycotted the 2018 elections. I think that that's actually quite possible. There are people inside. There was a report in the Jacobin, inside the Bolivarian movement, there was a report in the Jacobin of a terrible conduct by Maduro who altered a local election to undermine a Bolivarian cadre who was doing really good work in local organizing efforts. I don't have time to get into the details of it. But of course, this person now is organizing and supporting, against a U.S. invasion and coup. So again, that just, as of this moment, that remains the prime thing. The second thing, again, and this is the other sort of thing that's mind-boggling about it, is that for those of us who oppose a U.S. coup and invasion, we're supporting the process that has been put forth by Mexico, as an example, which is that there needs to be actual diplomacy and negotiation here. So there is going to be an alternative scenario, period. Anyway, you map it up. Question from Spencer. Thoughts on the recent attacks undertaken by India, both within Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir? Seems like Pakistan is opting for restraint and de-escalation to prevent an all-out war, but unsure how long they'll last. And then, hey, Michael, how do I, a Saudi Arabian, criticize Israel without being accused of being an anti-Semite? Dude, I would just say on that question, just criticize the policies and actions of the state of Israel. And never talk about Jews as an essentialist category or group of people. You have an absolute right to talk about a nation state. Anyone. I think it's interesting, and I'm not sure. The Indians say they hit an actual terrorist training camp, which is definitely possible. Pakistan definitely supports those. The Pakistanis are saying that basically they hit a forest, and they're basically doing a propaganda sort of lie to help them with local elections. I'm glad that Imran Khan has not escalated, of course, and we're going to have to do more India-Pakistan content on this show. And final question from Soy Captain. Hey, welcome back. Did you see this from the UN relief chief? What do you think of it? Pretty disgusting. Apparently, Mark Lowcock, the UN relief chief, sent out a thank you to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, #KSA, for this year's increased budget of $750 million US dollars and continued support for the humanitarian response in Yemen. Yeah, it's disgusting. I gotta say, like, that's what the UN does. They are diplomats, and but that is unbelievably disgusting that the country that is literally causing the mass murder and crimes in Yemen is trying to wash away some blood through PR relations like that. So yes, of course, it's disgusting and a mistake. Guys, thanks everybody. Of course, there's going to be an extra show with Daniel Bessner, and then of course an illicit history on Sunday. If for whatever reason, it will either be the extra show next week or the illicit history this Sunday, but either way, extra show coming. Next Tuesday, Ben Burgess is coming in studio, and we're talking about logic for the left. We're talking about this new Ben Shapiro fans apparently getting so triggered that they pulled down a YouTube video that had a policy conversation about Israel and used logic that Ben Burgess did for our friends over at Zero Books. Interesting. That's going to be a lot of fun. Become a patron today, patreon.com/TMBS. You get 2-to-1 extra content. We're also undertaking efforts for those of you who are already patrons because there's so much extra content in there. And I understand that Patreon does not do a good job of helping you find it. So we're going to be figuring out ways of helping people track all of those extra shows because there's a huge amount of them now, both in terms of between post games and illicit histories and idea primers. I mean, at least like 150 or so. Probably more, honestly. Probably more. A ton. And more content coming out all the time. And of course, the theory readings and everything else. We want to see you in LA April 20th. Get your tickets. Thanks, everybody. Good night.